being something that was actively promoted and personally experienced. And that's the essence of what I'm going to talk about, the how of how can you achieve that, especially for people with multiple challenges. So I'm going to first tell you about my son, Jay Turnbull. And to advance the slide, Flavio, I need you once again. Let's go forward. I had it on the wrong side. Thank you, Flavio. Robin mentioned my son, Jay Turnbull, who died when he was 41. This was Jay at his 40th birthday party. He had had some rough years that I'll tell you about up until this point. But thankfully, he was at the top of his game in his 40s and before he died. Loved music. You know, and one of the keys to belonging is finding places to belong where everybody loves what you love. And where, for Jay, it was music. So this road of diverging, you know, we talked a lot about that. And some of you, probably most of you, will remember the familiar Robert Frost poem. Thank you. 3 times you've helped me. And I will need you more. See, if belonging is being needed, Flavio belongs. Thank you. The Robert Frost poem, that 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. That's a lot of what we've talked about this morning, is whether you're on the road to segregation, the road to exclusion, or the road to inclusion, and the road to belonging. And as Emily told us, it starts so early, you know, in preschool. Once you get off track, then you often stay off track. So for Jay, there was the special preschool, but there was really not much of a preschool that long ago. It was more of a daycare center at best. Special classes, special scouts troop, special religious program, special camp, you know, special secondary class, sheltered workshop, and group home. And I'm going to talk about these last ones because I'm going to situate what I say in the transition to adulthood. Although the method that I'm going to share with you for belonging can happen at any lifespan stage, starting in early intervention of infants and toddlers and going through senior years. So for Jay, when in our community, the students with significant disabilities, with more intensive support needs, with higher level needs, would automatically transition to a sheltered workshop that was, how many of you know what a sheltered workshop is? A workshop where people with disabilities work that is segregated, pays very exceedingly low wages, even, you know, just less than $1 an hour, less than 50 cents an hour, you know, and is not at all what we would call belonging. And then group homes or congregate care, where groups of people with disabilities live. So I want you to know, those of you who are teaching younger students, that this is often what awaits them. And you are the one that can put them on the road to inclusion, and you are the one who can partner with them over years, even decades, to get to a place of belonging. And I'm going to tell you some success stories of how that's happened. But Jay transitioned in our community, the only supports that were available, this was in the early 90s, to these segregated settings, while his dad and I were on the board of directors of the agency trying to change it to be more inclusive. And they let us know from the outset they were not interested in changing. They were, as the director said, we're satisfied, and they were satisfied with segregation. Jay, having a significant intellectual disability, experiencing autism, and experiencing a bipolar disorder, this young man was very unhappy in the group home and the sheltered workshop that was offered to him. And he chose to hit and choke another person every time he saw him. He didn't have the language to express his disarray, but he had the behavior to lash out. And wouldn't you know that the person he chose to hit and choke every time he saw him was the son of a state legislator? Do you know how quickly Jay Turnbull was expelled from the only community adult program in our community? But even before he was expelled, all of us as his family, myself, Kate, her sister Amy, my husband Rudd, knew that this wasn't the right place for Jay. And we didn't want to start a new service system. We were tired of advocacy. We had started his program at almost every level. He was the first generation of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. But we knew that it wasn't right, and we knew that it was second class. And we knew that we wouldn't want to live there. Kate wouldn't want to live there. I wouldn't want to live there. I was really embarrassed to visit because it confronted me with the second class status of where he lived and worked. And it was so painful to me as a mother. And so one of our friends told us, Ann and Rudd, no matter how far down the wrong road you go, if it's a wrong road, turn around. Some of you may be on the wrong road. Some of you know people with disabilities who are on the wrong road. And what I want to share with you is we can always get to the other road, but it takes a lot of doing. So Jay was expelled from the only adult service program in our community after, Number
4.
Yeah, 4. Yes. There we go. I'm waiting for number 5. Okay. I'm counting on you. And so there we go. Flavio did it for us again. What? And so, it went off again? Okay. I'm going to talk really loud this isn't going to take long. There we go. Number 5. What was that? Oh, is that 6? I've lost. Is that 5? Okay. I've lost count. How's that? Good. Okay. So here we were in this awful situation. And Rudd, my husband, and I went to the director of the program. He called this meeting to tell us that Jay was going to be expelled, that he didn't think Jay was ready for group home living and for sheltered workshop living, and that there was a program at an institution in the state that dealt with people with significant behavioral challenges, and maybe Jay should go there. And as he talked to us, Rudd said to him, we're we're going to set up inclusive living for Jay and other people in our community. And we don't know exactly how we're going to do that, but we're going to do that. And the director said, oh, listen to what he said. I still remember it, like how many years later, 35 years later, however many. What are you going to do when you fail? Is what he said to us. Because he knew Jake wasn't ready. He knew Jake couldn't do it. He presumed no confidence. He had the most dangerous assumption. And so he said, what are you going to do when you fail? And Rudd said, we're not going to fail. We're going to succeed. And that's not a threat, it's a promise. And that was a changing point in our lives. And for those of you who are committed to students with disabilities, you will have students who need a changing point in their life, regardless of their age. And you are capable of doing what we did, and I'm going to tell you what we did, and I'm going to give you a lot of practical tips of how to foster belonging in a way that enables people to flourish and to have enviable lives. So Jay came home, and he was like 22. He came, and there was nothing in his day. There were no activities. And the first thing that we did, it was kind of the easiest thing, was to hire a student from the university in our community where Rudd and I both worked to take Rudd to a fitness center and to work out, knowing that exercise is really good for everything. And so Jay had one activity, which was to go. But how the universe blessed us is the person that we hired was the educational advisor at a fraternity on campus. And he would take Jay to the fraternity house. And Jay loved music. And a lot of the guys in the fraternity loved music. And so he would kind of go in their rooms and sing. Probably most of you have not seen that movie Rain Man. Have you seen Rain Man? You may be too young for Rain Man. About the person with autism, and Tom Cruise is his brother. And these guys kind of wanted to be Tom Cruise. And they got, they saw this was a person that was different and it interested them. So Jay became, what we learned is what you get kicked out of programs for people with disabilities for, they do in fraternities all the time. So some hitting, some choking, some air being expelled from your body parts, all of this was just perfectly normal, at the fraternity. And I love this picture. This is the pirate party. And just look at this and think, what is the sense of belonging here? And how divergent is this photo in terms of these guys dressing up and having a really good time. So, but then we couldn't believe it. And you could be this person in somebody's life. Put yourself in the place of the guy on the right-hand side with the big smile and the letters on the front. Because he came to us and he said, I think Jay should move out from living with the two of you because you do too much for him and he'll not be independent as long as he's always living with his parents, and he needs to have a place of his own. And I wanted to say, okay, you little upstart, if you only knew what we've been through, if only knew the pain we've been through, how in the heck are we going to do that? And how could we make that happen? And he said, I'll be his roommate. You could be the roommate of a person with a disability and change their life forever. And so we got up all of our courage, and with the real estate market in Lawrence, Kansas, where we lived, Rudd and I worked at the University of Kansas. It's a different real estate market than in Los Angeles. It's a lot more economical. And so with housing subsidies that were available at that time for adults that made the low income that Jay had, and with the housing prices, we were able to manage to get a place for Jay and for the guys living with him to live. And they lived together for about a year before the fraternity guys were moving on. But what we found in a university town, and that could be the same at Cal State in a university environment, that there were other students who were interested. And what we did is we offered students the opportunity to live there for no rent and no utilities. And some of you are saying, yeah, I saw your eyes, yeah. To live there, but providing support to Jay. And then at that time, Jay would come home on the weekends to give these guys some of their own freedom and independence. So it was the first time Jay had peer friends. It was the first time he had really belonged with other people. And he was 22 years old. He shouldn't have had to wait that long. But it was wonderful when it happened. Because Rudd and I worked at the university, we were able to help him get a clerical aid job where he did the mail run and the shredding and the recycling and the copying and the collating, and tasks that he could do that he was proud of and that he had coworkers. And this was so different than being in the sheltered workshop surrounded by people with disabilities. He was surrounded inclusively by a community of people who really promoted what were Emily's top levels. He was needed, he was befriended, he was heard, he was supported. It was a wonderful environment. But what Rudd and I learned is we were getting really weary because everything that was happening, we were needing to make happen. We had 2 adolescent daughters who had some of their own needs and challenges. We often said that Jay was the only child of ours who did not take the car out of the garage at night without a driver's license. Yeah, yes, Kate, that was you. So we were having other things we were dealing with. And then all of the advocacy that was required. And so we decided that we needed help. And here we were, 2 professors in the university, and we needed help. And if we needed help, almost all, if not all, families need help, because it's really hard to belong across the environment by setting it all up yourself. And so I want to tell you about a process that we adapted. There's a lot that's been written about circles of support for people, and a lot written about person-centered planning. What are the preferences of the person with the disability? But we felt with person-centered planning, often there was conversation about what the person wanted, but there was no action plan to put it into place. So the meeting was over and the family went home and they were left with all the work of making it happen. And circles of support sometimes did not lead to systems change. that we really had a lot of hard work to do. So this is the process that I'm going to tell you about. And Flavio has set up a QR code where you will get a handout of very detailed tips, strategies for each of the 5 stages of group action planning. With this handout, you will be able to implement this process. I don't want to just give you an idea and say good luck. I want to say this is what we learned from 15 years of working on this process. And now I'm 78 years old and I'm still doing group action planning with families in my community, in enabling their sons and daughters to live inclusively along the lines that Jay lived. In fact, the next meeting is Wednesday night for one of them. So you will get these. But getting back to our PowerPoint, the inviting support is inviting people who can help make happen what you need to make happen. And in Jay's case, this was family, this was friends, this was a person from our church, this was co-workers, this was musicians because he loved music. If he had loved sports as his top thing, then it would have been people, who had access to the sports in the community. If he loved other things, if he loved gaming, then we'd have gamers there. There were several questions from people, some of you who are neurodiverse, about being with your own people. And if you want the group to be combined and filled up with people who are neurodiverse, great. I mean, you choose the people, that are your community, and who can help make it happen. And there has to be a facilitator. You can't just meet and shoot the bull. You have to meet with every meeting. This is something we're working on. Jay needs to be able to do some of the tasks at work that he's not able to do. How can we help make that happen? Jay needs to learn to ride a taxi. How can we make that happen? That was before Uber. So you see my language is kind of old now. So you invite your people, and then what you do is you think of everything that an IEP meeting is, and you do the opposite. So you don't have any folders with papers and assessments. You're not talking about the students' deficits and needs. It's not somber, but you create connections. You have food. In Jay's case, you have music. You celebrate the birthdays and the special occasions of everybody in the group. Not just Jay. It can't be just about Jay. It has to be about everybody in the group, because belonging is reciprocal. Friendship is reciprocal. And so often with people with disabilities, and I think with person-centered planning, we're kind of planning all around what are the preferences of the person with the disability. It reminds me of a guy, a really good friend, Mike Roof, Kate, who would take Jay out to lunch every week. And Jay wanted to go to Hardee's, and Mike wanted to go to the student co-op that was the health food store. And it couldn't always be Jay's preference. It had to be sometimes Mike's preference. Jay needed to learn that you give and take in order to have friends. But one of the most important things for belonging is to create these connections among people. And Flavio, at his 7th helpfulness, is going to show us just a little quick snippet of a video. This was a meeting that we had when we were talking about something really serious, like what would happen if like Rudd and I died simultaneously, like if we went down on an airplane, you know, could this group keep going, you know, and because most of the time we were dealing more with immediate things. But what the greatest fear of families, and I want you to hear me, the greatest fear is what will happen when we die. And we don't talk about that enough. You know, we keep it in the closet because it's scary and sad. You know, but this meeting was about what if we died? You know, what would happen to this group? That in the ideal situation, it wouldn't be the family that would be facilitating the group. But in our case, I was the facilitator. You know, so, you know, how would this group keep going without us? And so this snippet, this was a meeting where everybody was introducing themselves, and you can just kind of get a feel for the people there. That's Jay's Spanish. I'm sorry to tell you. They were the housemates for a long time. Jesus.
I'm Corey Royer. I've known Jay 5 or 6 years. Was his roommate for a long time. We were in the same fraternity together. We used to hang out and do a lot of things together. Yeah, we do that too, That's right. I watch out here really good. And I also taught him language. That's, you know. Next time on the volume, watch you say that to Corey. I think it's Corey needs to learn how to shave. Don't you think, Jay? Yeah. He's got a beard. That's terrific. Corey, that's the language. Corey, why don't you explain that to everybody? Well, somehow it just came about that Jay and I use this little language. But anyhow, we have our own little way of talking on occasion. And he does that to get me going, and I do that to get him going. I always think it's silly. Only men understand it. The male it's a male bonding thing. Truly, it's all this guy did very well. One of the great things about Corey's language ability there is that it was an instant connection with JC, and then we wonder who's shaking who's the hand.
So does that feel like a IEP meeting? So you feel the laughter, the lightness, the joy, you know, and this is what we need to create these environments of belonging where people want to come. And rather than feeling drained, like I got to go to one more meeting, they feel fulfilled, you know, by being there. So the next component of group action planning that you will read about on your handout is great expectations. And, you know, honestly, it was hard for Rudd and me to keep great expectations given what happened in the disability service system of getting expelled and of being told Jay wasn't ready for congregate segregated living in the community. You know, you just get your hopes dashed so many times until it's hard to raise up the flag of hope again. But with the group, with everybody saying, what is it that Jay really wants? And with Jay saying, what is it, that really makes me happy? Jay didn't have a lot of language to kind of put into words, what he wanted. But we knew from what lit up his face and lit up his soul, of things that he really enjoyed, such as going to music venues, going to places where he could dance with people, going to church, having a sense of reverence. And so the group, keeps coming up with great expectations. But what we tried to do is not just come up with every great expectation we could think of, but what could we work on for the next month or two? And then once we accomplish that, what then is next? So small steps, successive approximation, so we're not overwhelmed, so we're not failing once again. So a goal that we can accomplish if everybody does their part. And then the solving problems. And I think I was going to skip this video, but I just think I'm going to play it at least for a while. Number 8. And this is Amy and Kate.
Ultimately, we are, his family members, and we do have the responsibility.
Remember, we're talking about if we die.
It isn't like a negative responsibility, but it's our choice, and that we want to help. But we both know that, in the long, long, long run, as we talk about it, we're privileged to share the same last name as him, and therefore, we will take the responsibility.
What I really think about mainly is the financial support. I don't know how much financial support you will give to Jay. I don't know if his house and everything is covered by his job and by the roommates. And I don't know anything about that. And I don't know if when mom and dad die, I'm going to be still studying. I'm still going to be in school. So that really worries me. I don't know how. I mean, again, I don't know how much financial support you give them. And if we're still in school, or Amy has just gotten her first job, or same with me, and we don't have that much money, how we can